there's this one as well. So we, probably less dense, more kind of down towards the bottom of that climb. So again, in terms of trying to understand what exactly teachers need to know about discourse in order to really sort of shift from a more kind of socialization to an academic literacies perspective, focusing on epistemology, communicative practices, different genres within different fields, but also sort of, moving between that sort of clausal level and giving students a chance to notice and then experiment and play around a little bit would be interesting. So those are the kind of, that's the toolkit, as it were, that we're trying to sort of focus on. The sort of darker gray are these sort of LCT, sociological perspectives. The lighter ones are the kind of more linguistic SFL ones. And obviously genre pedagogy, kind of building that all around a genre pedagogy, deconstructing, reconstructing, constructing texts together. All right, I think that's me for now. Sorry, I hope I didn't take too long. All right, I don't know if you want to do questions now, or do you want to jump in, Letitia?
I don't mind. If anyone has questions that they'd like to ask now, I don't mind.
I'll stop sharing then, if I can. How do I stop sharing?
Down on the bottom, it should say stop. On the toolbar at the bottom.
Yeah, and on the sharing thing. Maybe if you just share yours, it might override mine. Okay.
Oh, okay, yes, I can do that. I think Steve has a question, or he's raising his hand.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Grant. That was amazing. Really, really interesting. Obviously, lots in there. I was interested in how this lands with teachers. So obviously, you have a lot of experience of this. I don't have the level of SFL knowledge that you do by any means. So, kind of even just sort of sitting listening to you, there's lots and lots to kind of that I feel I need to slow down and unpack and work with and so on. So in terms of actually using the toolkit with teachers, how does that work? Is it a training course? Do you do it a little bit at a time? Do you have resistance? How do you make this work with a staff team?
Always resistance. I mean, we're English teachers, so we're going to resist something. No, I mean, we kind of, once we'd identified our sort of toolkit as it was and the concepts, we sort of broke it up into 6 PD sessions, which we asked teachers to attend, where we kind of introduced the concepts. As with most things, you kind of plan something. So the initial idea was we would do the session, teachers would get into their course teams and they would start playing around with it, a little bit like kind of a genre pedagogy cycle. And I think Gail Forey at Bath University kind of suggested that, where you deconstruct it, you look at the concepts, and then people get into teams and they start playing around with it. That was the idea. We never got there for various reasons. The playing around didn't really happen. But I think it's fair to say that we're seeing some of that sort of transferring through into materials development on some of the course teams. And I think the things we're seeing are the ones that are kind of closer to their existing knowledge. So for example, appraisal, teachers know about appraisal. They perhaps don't. I think what the appraisal system can provide is a more nuanced sort of layout of it, so you get more coverage, or you make sure you have more coverage of the different parts of it. So we're starting to see, some of that coming through. Concepts like grammaticality, I think, people understand as hedging. Yeah, we all know what that is. So it's sort of building on what they know, and then sort of, I think a lot of these tools sort of add nuance and kind of a bit more granularity to a general concept like hedging. So what are we hedging? Is it a definition or a claim, or are we actually categorizing things here? What is it exactly that we're doing? So I think, we are seeing some of this come through, but I think that's going to be a process, and all PD is a journey. So we kind of, we'll see how we go. But I think definitely actually applying this within the context of materials development is where the real learning and discussion will go on. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to...
Can I ask a quick question? I can't see everyone. I'll just dip in. So I had a similar question to Steve, but also, how did you come up with the toolkit grant?
Just by doing exactly what I was doing there. So understanding what teachers have to read, sorry, not teachers, students, what they have to read in their subject units, and then also looking at what they have to write and what successful students are actually doing. So looking at that and sort of thinking, sort of working back from that, like how would I explain what's going on here? From a linguistic perspective, or from an LCT perspective, and it's sort of identifying, and we settled on 6 key kind of sessions. So exactly what I was doing when I was talking through those sort of.
Yeah, I was just wondering, were there more than 6, or how did you decide on the 6? And did you come to, when you were doing this, with a lot of knowledge yourself? Were you reading and exploring at the same time?
Always reading, but I have kind of been familiar with these concepts. I mean, concepts from LCT are notoriously difficult to get across or sort of a handle on. So it's always a process, and I've got a long way to go. But I think from a linguistic perspective, Halliday's kind of 3 meta functions are a good starting point. Whenever anyone communicates, there's going to be something ideational, textual, or interpersonal that'll be interesting to uncover. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, there's one in the chat from Daniel Sunderland. I'm just trying to read it to see if it's a question or a comment.
I think it is a question, Carol. I was just reading it. It was following on from Steve's question. So Daniel wondered that once teachers have seen the value in this, how would they be supported, and then selecting and recontextualizing that knowledge, and ultimately how it might land with the students?
At the moment, we don't know how. I mean, we have started trialing with select groups certain materials and getting feedback from students, trying to understand basically, do they like it? Do they see short-term transferability into their subject units on the IFP, and what do they feel about the longer-term transferability into UG? Do they feel this is valuable? And I think generally we're getting positive feedback from students. In terms of teachers, I think it's going to be very much a case of getting into teams, having discussions. We have a process where someone will write a draft materials, other people will have a look at it, and that's where a discussion could go on about what particular things we might want to focus on. So I really think it's through that sort of interaction and discussion within teams that real learning, or the learning that becomes applicable, will sort of go on. So we've kind of raised awareness of these terms in the PD sessions, and now it's a case of having discussions and explaining our own understandings of these terms, and and that'll be the learning, I think.
Really, it's got a comment of, during CPD, explanation and materials development goes hand in hand. That's a good practical way to approach it, isn't it? Showing examples, and then people sharing and then applying.
We did much of that in the sort of CPD sessions, sort of deconstructing, understanding what it is, and then sort of having a go at some texts. But that's quite difficult, you know, when if you throw in a concept for the first time and then you ask to analyze a text. I think it's a much longer process of you know, actually doing stuff with it, and then coming back, revising, you know, all of that sort of non-linear stuff.
And while you've got a comment, perhaps teachers could focus on a few of these tools first. But did you do that through the 6 sessions, like one at a time?
Yeah. Each session focused on a tool, and then we had a little bit of playing around with it in the session. Unfortunately, the sort of course teamwork didn't happen. There were various things going on which kind of got in the way of that. But we've got our course teams up and running now. So, you know, I expect those discussions will continue to happen.
Yeah.
All right.